It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Yahoo! Oh, there we go. It had to think about it. This week, starring Mr. Joe Brandt. Yeah, baby! Plenty of level on that. And this week, we're going to talk about my favorite subject, metadata. Yeah, baby. Meta that data. Welcome to the big show, Joe.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, I'm sorry that it took this long to have you. Okay, I'm going to look at notes. And hello, everybody in the chat room. Hello.
How many people do we have in the chat room?
I don't know. Usually somewhere around 100. I don't know. They build up over time. Musicians often come late. Anyway, I see a lot of Bob Gunnerfeld in there, Dan Weber. Who else do we have? That's it? Only two? Is that possible? Ari, that we've only got two people in the chat room?
They all went to the event, so.
I think it's just buffering. There's 5.
Okay. It's buffering. Can't have that. I'm sorry, what?
No, they all went to the presentation at the taxi.
Yeah,
rally,
maybe.
So.
So I'm very excited to have, I got to remember, the camera's over there. Very excited to have Joe on the show because not only is he an esteemed member of the Taxi A&R staff with just tons of experience, but he did a presentation, a class this year at the Taxi Road Rally that was by far the biggest hit out of all the classes. I mean, seriously, even Liz came down here before from the front desk to tell me that people are still sending emails saying, I love that class.
That's great.
So I'm excited to be able to share it today with all of you guys. And let's tell you a little bit about Joe so that you know that you're getting this stuff from somebody who's qualified. He is a music supervisor / producer with over 10 years experience in the entertainment industry, skilled in music clearance, licensing, and editing. He's also expert at curating and keywording music based on genre, subgenre, tempo, featured instrumentals, and mood. He's a composer and a publisher with BMI and a member of the Guild of Music Supervisors. He holds a degree in audio engineering and another one in web development and communications. So, as I said in the email that you guys read before today's show that I sent out, having metadata, having the right metadata, having it in the right place is so crucial to your success in the music industry, and not just for film and TV placements. That's the thing. People think, oh, it's just for like music library work, but it's also really important for Spotify, Pandora, getting your videos seen on YouTube. It's critical.
Yeah.
So
videos, YouTube, photography, any type of stock, anything, not just music. Yeah.
Yeah, people search, and if you don't have the words in there,
it's basic SEO. Any product you have is going to need metadata.
People don't even understand what SEO. What? I'm sorry. I see a conversation going on the other side of the room. Is something not working? Anyway, Joe's class was a huge hit. So I'm going to start splitting my duties today. I'm doing something that I normally would never do, and that is Joe's class was such a big hit that I asked him to give me his, slide presentation, PowerPoint. So we've got the slides embedded in our software, and I am going to attempt to be your charming host and to be toggling back and forth between the live shot and the slides. And hopefully when the slides are up, you'll be able to hear the two of us talking. Hopefully. So let's find out if I can be Johnny Carson and the technical director. So let's get down to business and tell people exactly what metadata is.
Yes,
Joe.
Just the most basic, form of just relevant information, relevant data about data. It's just drilling it down as far down as it can possibly can. So, like we mentioned before, data is not just music. It's everything from any videos, photography, clothing, spreadsheets. It's all the basic information that you would need. I think we have a slide that has the breakdown of just.
I got it up already.
Yeah, so there's no reason to go down a list. But all of this is relative to music too, and the reason why I first got into, I guess, metadata was I was a web developer, like you mentioned. So
Yeah.
Worked for a footwear company that had great, healthcare foot products, and the competition was killing them, and the competition's product was inferior. And the reason why they were making so much money online is they had incredible SEO presence online.
SEO means search engine optimization.
Yeah. So the keywords, the metadata descriptions in the websites and the files, all the alt tags, every piece of product had so much information in. And it's just the same thing with music, really. Some composers have the best music out there, but nobody can find it because there's no information, there's no metadata, there's no way to search for it.
I don't want to say that it's heartbreaking, but it is heartbreaking that
there's
a misconception amongst musicians that back in the day was more true than it is today, and that is if your song or your instrumental or whatever is just so damn good, none of that stuff matters because greatness is going to rise to the top. Mm-hmm. It's going to be discovered. Your life is going to change. Everything's going to be wonderful. But because of the availability of software and the marketing channels and distribution channels through the internet now, everybody is a rock star. Yes, everybody's a record label. Everybody's a this or that. And so great music, it's only great if people hear it, and they're not going to hear it if they don't get the metadata right.
Yeah, same thing with anything, yeah. Just if you don't have the right marketing, if you don't have the right SEO tools, if you don't, have the right push behind it, no one's going to find it. I'm a music supervisor also, so I'm constantly looking for music. And we spoke before how the Viacom site has literally 1 million pieces of music. So
that's
you finally get a deal with a library. You finally get signed. You get your money. You finally have your music in a library. It gets approved by Viacom. It's finally this giant portal with 1 million pieces of music. And how do they find you? And a lot of times, as you know, with reality shows and unscripted, the deadlines are crazy. It's always last minute. We need this, and this. We need, these 10 different types of scenes. These are the 10 different types of music we need. These are the moods. You got a half hour.
Yeah.
And we only have such limited time to find what we find. And a lot of times it's just the music we find first that makes the cut.
Right.
And days later I find music like, wow, this was so much better.
That's got to be a little heartbreaking.
I just go into the metadata just out of curiosity, and they don't have the keywords that we were looking for. It's like you have the music, no one's finding it because they're not telling them how to find it.
It's sad.
And it's really sad. It is sad, but it's, that's one thing, a lot of companies are now paying, good money just to
get metadata put in.
Yeah, because it's, you need to be found.
Let's talk for a moment about the streaming services too. Let's not just concentrate, although mostly what we're going to be talking about today will be, from the music supervisor, music library perspective. But for Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, etc., it's also important there because consumers are searching.
Absolutely.
And playlists are built from what people find.
Yeah, if you have your own YouTube videos, if you have your own blogs, your own products, they're going to search. There's a field now for if you have your own YouTube channel.
Yeah.
There's keywords for your channel, so it's all super relevant. And a lot of companies now, they expect the artist, the composer, the producer to create their own metadata because they're overwhelmed. I mean, you could either give it to the library, to the, to Pandora, to, any type of, I always go back to photography, video, any type of, clothing line, whatever it is. If you want the company to do the metadata for you, they'll literally take months and months and months. So you're behind. They have so many other clients. They have so many other. You're going to be way down here. But if you have great metadata, you go up top of the list. So now all of a sudden you're going to be found much, much sooner.
One thing that I've noticed is when musicians are asked to do their own metadata contains several things, but one of the things is genre or mood. And we'll talk further about that stuff a little later in the show. But when you ask musicians to identify what it is that they've got, they often get it wrong because they can't see it from an objective perspective. So What's worse, wrong metadata or no metadata, or they both suck?
I guess they both suck. I mean, sometimes I always tell artists and composers, just don't stuff it, or just don't put irrelevant information in there just because you think they'll find it.
Right.
Because if they do find your music, your songs, your cues, whatever the case is, any product you have, back in the day, if you had a software company, companies would put in Pepsi and Coke, hoping theirs would be found.
Right.
But then start getting penalized for that.
Because Google's algorithms are that smart.
Exactly. And also the customer realizes, that the information is relevant and they don't trust you anymore.
Right.
So same thing with a music supervisor. If they're trying to find music on your site, your portal, your SoundCloud, and music pops up that's not relevant, they're going to stop going to you. Sometimes even if music's great, because they don't have time a lot of times to find music that doesn't match. Give them what they want, hit the bullseye.
Yep.
Don't go around, just because they have an electric guitar solo, don't put Van Halen and then Zeppelin and all these great virtuoso guitar player types just because there's a solo in there.
Right.
If it doesn't fit the style or the technique, and we find it all the time.
I remember I once asked a friend of mine who's a video editor, back when keyword stuffing was still pretty predominant, actually, and libraries were actually doing it. Mm-hmm. And the editors would get a bunch of music, in a bin where they might have like 5,000 or 10,000 tracks that they're potentially using on a show.
Yeah.
And this guy would pull something up based on keywords, and it wasn't right. And he would look to see who the composer was, and from that moment forward would try to avoid that anything done by that composer. And it could have been the library that stuffed it. It could have been the library relied on the composer to come up with the keywords.
They both hurt in the end, yeah.
Yeah, it's like...
it's always better to give them 2 or 3 things that are really close than 50 just in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Because, you don't want to waste their time, and like I said, it'll stop using you.
Kind of analogous to a dating site, if you were a single person using a dating site and you liked, 25-year-old female redheads, and it pulled up guys with black hair.
That's another example of metadata.
Yeah.
Make sure you put your what you like, things you like, and not,
Well, you and I have something in common, which is shoes and shoes.
Okay.
And part of the reason that I came up with taxis, I used to be a shoe salesperson.
Wow, okay.
And
I worked at Macy's Shoes for a while.
Okay, so, if a lady comes in and asks for a size 7.5B Potaswa pump in beige that she can wear with a dress to a wedding, and can you match this color beige, and you give her like a Bass Weejan and Cordovan and a 9.5D men's shoe, she's going to look at you like, what kind of drugs are you on?
Exactly.
Same thing.
Totally.
So, can we talk about... People often ask me, where do I go? Where do I put this stuff in? How do I do it? So I'm going to pull up a slide.
Yeah, I think a lot of the just the basic tools would be like, I guess iTunes. I guess on PC, I guess you might have QuickTime or Winamp, or there's a lot of software out there for metadata for organizing. Just your albums, your artists, the songs. But that's really just, maybe they might have the song titles, the composers, the publishers, the label, things like that. But they don't get into the moods and the descriptions and the actual keywords, the instruments. So, as far as really basic, you can do it with iTunes, but you're very limited. They don't even have, at least last I checked, they don't have a publishing field. You actually have to put the publishing under the notes.
Right.
So that's not a good thing, I don't think.
Well, what about libraries? Oftentimes libraries will say, don't bother doing the metadata because I'm just going to do it when I get it, because they feel that theirs is going to be more accurate. But there's some basic metadata. And for instance, I want to let you guys know that Liz, who is the woman that packages up the music when it leaves Taxi and it goes into a disco file and goes out to our clients in the industry, she said it's astonishing. She's working on a batch that's going out today of 150 pieces of music, and she came down here and said, Michael, would you please mention on the show that members will use like a partial song title. It could be The Rain Falls in the Springtime, and the artist will just put rain.
Yeah.
Because they know the song and they
Sure.
colloquially, I guess would be the word, call it rain in their own head for their own purposes
Sure,
on their own
sure.
desktop to their family and friends. Oh, where's that song Rain? But when a company like Taxi is putting this together, we have to go back and look at their song list and go, Rain. Oh, here's one when rain comes in springtime. That's got to be what they're talking about. But it does create room for error because
Absolutely.
they didn't have the full title. So let's talk about even if you're dealing with a library that doesn't want the full boat of stuff, what are the critical things that every song should have?
Well, definitely put the entire title. If it's called Rain, there's so many libraries, even within libraries, that have the same exact title.
Right.
And so they'll get confused if they'll possibly use your cue on a show, but if you don't have your proper information, they're going to put the composer publishing information for a different composer.
Right.
So you're not even going to get you finally got the placement and you won't even get the money.
I saw my song on Animal Planet and I didn't get bupkis.
I mean, every library is going to be different, obviously, but as a composer, definitely put the artist name and the title. And then that's about all I would put in the actual file name. I know some people like to put their phone number down or their email within the actual file name. I prefer just to put that in the actual metadata somewhere in the background, like through an iTunes or some other type of software. I mean, I use SoundMiner, but that's more like, I guess, for like bulk.
Yeah, and that's also pro level software. That's
but
quite expensive.
Yeah, but a lot of we should probably update some pricing later, but I mean, it's probably like $300, I believe.
That's
yeah.
You know, Taxi's $300, and people say, "I can't believe it's $300" because they think it should be free or it should be $19.95. So I don't think a lot of people will invest.
They might have a pro one that might be a little bit more expensive, and then there's some other software out there as well that does similar things to that. But yeah, definitely in just the file name we're talking about, I'll just put the name of the title, the entire full version. Don't put alt mix or version 3. Don't put any of that in. Put
the title, right?
The final full master version, and the name of the artist or the composer. And if you really feel like you have to, put your phone number down or an email.
Yeah.
But that can be put in the back end, in the background through an iTunes or a
Right.
spreadsheet you send out. But
So for most people, because most of the people watching the show aren't doing stuff in bulk and they're not going to do a spreadsheet. So they would be doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 at most. So is iTunes the most common thing to get basic metadata?
Yeah, I think for basic, it is iTunes, and they do have, I believe, some type of batch process that you can actually do your entire, like 100 songs.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I don't think you can do it through iTunes itself, but there is a way to do the batch processing. So that's definitely important. You can sometimes just put your initials down. If your name's really long, you might want to just put your initials. I know a lot of libraries have prefixes to determine what library it is.
Right.
But a lot of libraries and music supervisors want you to know it's an artist. They don't want it to be a production library artist, because it's, a lot of times
it connotates it's cheesier or something, not as cool.
So it is good to put the artist name so they know you're a real artist, not just some production piece of music. Not that, that's bad, but they want real artists because sometimes they want to promote you. They want to promote you on Spotify. They want to promote you on the show through some snipe or some type of cross promotion on their website or their social media.
Right, it makes them look cooler and it helps you sell more music and get your brand out there. So let's talk about this common fields for metadata. Obviously, we've just talked about the basics being your name, the song title, your name, and some way to contact you. People, I saw people this weekend that joined Taxi that gave us an email address, but they didn't give a phone number when they signed up for Taxi. We have had situations where, for instance, one day I told the story 1,000 times. We had some guy. A Bruce Willis movie called Looper, and they wanted to license this gentleman's song for a scene for $5,000 for that film, and we had to call the guy. He was out plowing his field when we called him, and he said, "You're going to charge?" I said, "You're going to get a sync fee for $5,000," and he's like, "Why do I have to pay $5,000 to get my song in a Bruce Willis movie?" And in the end, he said, "I don't care. I'm busy plowing right now, and I can't go inside to take care of it." So his song didn't make it in the movie, but we did have his phone number. There have been other scenarios where we had an emergency situation, we need to reach somebody, and email was all we had, and they were at work. So we couldn't text them, we couldn't call them, and they lost the gig.
Wow.
So, okay.
Yes, definitely email, phone, obviously. Alternate phones, alternate emails. Make sure, you don't put your work email and then, you decide to quit and you forget to update your email, or you get fired, God forbid.
Yeah.
But definitely,
Stuff happens, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just
life changes. You move.
Like a Gmail account is always safe. Even a lot of people have their own custom emails that they, register their own domain name, and a lot of times there's issues with, with the server, or maybe your domain name expired and you forgot.
I had that twice this weekend where I got emails from people and they were at boblewis.com, and when I went to boblewis.com, the site didn't exist.
Yeah. Let's
talk about some other common fields for metadata. I've got that up on the screen right now.
Definitely.
So genres we've touched on. Is there a recommended way for people to really know what genre they're in now? Because genres are very gray area-ish now. And
I mean,
the delineations are muddled.
It depends. It's some definitely subgenre. You want to probably drill down as much as you can. If you're an artist that has multiple subgenres, I would make the subgenre your genre. If you have,
interesting. So you don't need to say that it's dance and it's this form of dance. Just go right to whatever form of dance it is.
Some libraries, some websites are just dance, just rock, just jazz, just. I should break it down even further. Just trap, or just R&B, just punk music. Surf rock. So you don't want to have to put down rock. Surf rock or retro. Just it is what it is. And but if you have a lot of subgenres under a genre, like Latin music. Latin is such a broad term. There's hundreds of subgenres of Latin music. There's dozens and dozens of subgenres in jazz and rock. Every main genre you can think of, and I guess it depends. If you're just a singer-songwriter artist, you might want to go the traditional route, like of a billboard or a record store. If you're doing production music, the genres and categories are different for production music. It's not the same. It's not the traditional.
That's a really important fact. Let's talk about that for a moment. The genres that you might see on Spotify or the Billboard charts don't necessarily exactly relate to what you see as a music supervisor working in a reality show, and you get a library. So can you talk about some of those differences? Point out a couple of obvious ones?
Sure. A lot of times, even say tension suspense, that's like a genre production libraries will look at. But there's all different types of tension suspense. Depends on the show, the production company, the network. It could be rock, it could be orchestral. You can have urban tension suspense. So it's very, you kind of have to have both. You have to put them both in the metadata.
Okay.
But the top category might be tension suspense or urban tension. If you have a lot of urban, then I would put urban, and then maybe tension suspense would just be one of the moods.
But see, you can rattle this stuff off because you're an end user and you've been doing this for a long time now. What about somebody who's a composer sitting at home working, in a corner of their basement? How do they know what they've got? I know, Taxi.
I would make, usually in a case like that, if it's just an artist with 100 pieces of music, do the traditional Billboard genre, whether it's urban, rock, country, orchestral, singer-songwriter. And then maybe the subgenre would be more like if it's urban, is it trap, is it R&B, is it soul, is it funk? If it's rock, is it, rockabilly, is it heavy metal, is it, it's traditional rock and roll. And
I feel like they should run it by another person to get a little more objectivity.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when I do, I do a lot of curating and a lot of metadata for tons of libraries, and every one of them does it differently. So it really all depends on the end user and the actual company you're working with. When you go to the biggest companies like Kilotrax, Megatrax, Extreme, APM, they're all going to have it completely different. And when I try to create a brand new library and do the entire, the navigation, the top level, all the subgenres, I used to go to those sites as kind of like the go-to.
Yeah.
And none of them had this, they were all different. There's no standard. So you kind of have to have all your information on a
Right.
spreadsheet, and then depending on who you're giving that information to, you kind of have to, at least you have the information there. Now it's just a little bit of tweaking. You know?
We find that it's not uncommon for a library to run a listing with Taxi, reach out to us, and ask for music in a certain genre, and then they'll give us links to 2 or 3 examples, and the examples they give us are not that genre.
Exactly.
And we think how that happens is that a library owner is talking to another library owner, or maybe a composer that works for yet another library, and over the course of a lunch or a phone call or something, says, yeah, we're looking for a house. And so library owner number 2 goes, yeah, I need house music, but doesn't know anything about the genre, and so comes up with these lame examples. And it's like, which do you want? Do you want music that sounds like the references, or do you want house?
Yeah, worse yet, it's a home improvement show about building a house, and then so that can happen too.
Right, that's a great point.
I think for everybody, for composers, for artists, even for libraries, you have to know who the production is. Who's the production? Who's the client? What's the show? It's kind of an ongoing thing. Unfortunately, it's not something, okay, I'm done with metadata and I can sit back and relax.
Right.
A lot of things that, it's really, everything's mood based now, especially for production music. I don't know if, there's 2 different things. It's, we can either talk to the artist or the production libraries, but it's no longer just, like we're saying, just genres. It's moods. And also keywords that wouldn't be traditional for like a composer, like tasking, deliberation.
Yeah, let's talk. We were talking about this right before we went live. How many of you know what tasking music is? I knew, but that's because I'm a nerd. I mean, I live and breathe this stuff like you do.
I used to think it was like busy music, tasking, like very busy, very frantic and frenetic, and it's just, it can be anything depending on the show. If it's if it's a scientific show, or if they're doing surgery, it could be very electronic, very cerebral. If it's a car mechanic show, maybe it might be rock.
Yeah.
If it's a hair salon show, it could be EDM or urban or hip hop. So it all depends on the show, but those are keywords that they'll look for. Editors will look for that. Music supervisors will look for competition, deliberation. Like, what's deliberation? Like, so many, I guess 20 years ago, there was no reality television, so now it's all, competition shows. Elimination, being voted off the show.
Right.
So usually it's just tension, suspense, maybe anticipation, drama, but now you have to actually put those little nuances in there. Like elimination, deliberation.
And that's very different from what you might tag your stuff if you were thinking in terms of Spotify or Pandora.
Exactly. Completely different.
Yeah, they're not even going to have elimination.
No, not at all. Not at all. So those are different things you should think about.
What's the difference between a genre or a subgenre and a style?
Style would be more like, so it would be, urban tension, but then they might want, for styles it would be more like adventure, fantasy, for trailer music. Trailer music can be modern orchestral, it can be rock, it can be pop, but it's, for the style.
So you could say orchestral action hybrid for trailer.
Yes.
And those would all be accurate. Oh, let me pull that up.
We have some. I did some genre mapping examples to kind of break it down a little bit.
Mechanical. No, let's see. Do I have that one? There we go. Okay. All right. So talk about this.
Yeah. So this is just a general breakdown of what I did as an example to show how you can really pinpoint and drill down. This is more like for production music for score. There's different types of scores. There's cinematic, there's drama, there's dramedy, there's trailer music, there's sound design. So you can break those down even further. It just keeps on going down the rabbit hole. So cinematic obviously can have action, adventure, it could be horror, drama, investigative. Emotional, which is something that you have to be careful. A lot of times, people ask you for emotional or emotive,
right?
And it could be happy. Well, it can be
trying to get
sad.
back to the right. I will have the right screen for you guys
Sure.
momentarily. Where is my mechanical one? There we go.
And then, so dramedy, we know it's more drama, comedy, not really serious. It can be very quirky, sneaky, plucky.
Yeah. That's a great one because everybody seems to understand what dramedy is now, but not all dramedy is the same.
No.
Dramedy in the context of Keeping Up with the Kardashians would be different than dramedy that would be used for Aren't Those Puppies Adorable? Or whatever that show is called.
Yeah, the sneaky and playful. Yeah, and now I think they've overdone the pluckiness so much that they want to get away from the pizzicato.
They want to get away from it, but I have a theory. It's not unlike ukulele, happy clappy music with the ukulele. Yeah, there's still a ton of it out there.
It's the safe music. The networks, they always want a new sound.
Right.
Something that hasn't been done before. They'll try something new. That's great. But they always tend to go back to what the safe music is.
I say
typical quote-unquote reality dramedy.
Give them something plucky and pizzicato-ish, but do it on a ukulele.
Yeah, they'll use a lot of mallet instruments now, a lot of like vibes and a lot of, glockenspiel and things like that.
I have a theory that you can change anything by 15% and get them to go, that's genius. If you change it by 20% or greater, like, well, that's odd.
It's true. It's true.
Just a little different, It's like, do you want your steak with mushroom sauce or shallots tonight?
Yeah, mushroom shirt's a little bit too much. That's the 20% area, right? Where you have to push back. And I did put a couple of the other just more examples of like the subgenres broken down. That would be more like the style, and then maybe like second tier type of styles, and just kind of music for so cinematic music. It can be action, adventure, horror. Then obviously you can break that down even further. Action can be chase music. It can be battle, very percussive. A lot of percussive, very action-oriented music is great. If you have an actual percussionist yourself, or you have a great percussion library, I see a lot of beds of percussion underneath orchestral.
Right.
Because sometimes it's just it doesn't have the energy and the driving elements that
orchestral on its own.
Yeah, so you can get a lot of more uses just with the percussion, just with the bed. Sort of like a drone. You can put drones under anything, and that's why sometimes if I do a lot of cue sheets for a lot of shows, you literally have a 42-minute episode with 45 minutes of music.
Wow.
And we're like, how's that possible? Because music is just stacked on top of each other. And also you have the ins and outs and things like that. But definitely a lot of like percussive and, drones. And there's a lot of uses for those.
We've run a lot of listings in the last 3 years, 4 years in particular, looking for just plain old percussion tracks, nothing but percussion. And we'll get 500 to 1,000 submissions on that. Yeah. And I think the last time we did one, we had like 610 forwards because people got it really right.
Yeah.
And there's such a wide range of styles. If you just ask for plain old percussion tracks, you're going to get, drumline stuff. You're going to get Afrobeat stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to get Latin stuff. You're going to get robotic, futuristic stuff. And it all works.
Yeah, that's an example of subgenre for percussion.
Yeah, there you go.
You got the marching band music, and you got the orchestral, yes, you got the Latin, like you were saying. And I just, put a few more examples just to kind of, so you can see how it breaks down further.
Right.
So, I did one for drama, one for dramedy. So we can maybe put those up really quick. And, I can come up with some other ones too.
I'll make sure I get the right slides, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the next one, maybe.
The one after that?
Yeah, I think that one. Yeah, I think that one is dramedy. Maybe one before that is drama.
Let's try.
Do you have that one?
This one. That one. I don't know. Where should I be looking? Example 1, 2, or 3?
I guess the left side, I guess.
No, but example 1, 2, or 3. What does yours say? Example 2.
Example 2. Sorry about that.
Okay. No problem. There we go. Yay.
So again, just an example of different types of drama is all it says. So obviously you have emotional heartfelt, which is completely different from dark mystery, and then just emotional uplifting. And then, of course, you can break down further. The mystery can be, CSI, criminal, investigative, emotional, heartfelt can be broken down further to romance, tender moments. Uplifting emotional can be very corporate, empowerment, success. So again, a lot of this is just these are styles, but also kind of like just different in a style of or uses for.
You just gave me a great idea, and I'm going to need your help with this. I'm going to set up a section on our forum where members can ask other members for opinions, because it's one thing if you ask your mom or your cousin or your next door neighbor, what genre, what subgenre, what style.
Yeah.
You're not going to get great information.
I had a bunch of, when I did my presentation, a lot of the members were, can we send you this? Can you give us advice? And yeah, sure. And they got like 2 or 3 people if you send stuff to me. But
you probably had 20 people ask and only 2 or 3 actually followed through. Yeah, don't do that. But by the way, ultimately thousands of people will watch this show. Please don't send Joe your stuff and say what genre, unless you're going to send him a big fat check with it. Because time is money.
I'll listen all day.
Yeah. It's but that way at least they can get opinions from other people who are in the game that can be more objective than they can about their own stuff. And we have toyed with the idea, seriously talked about this numerous times, and I just talked to Joe about it earlier today. We're thinking about starting a tagging service here for members. And we're just trying to find a way to do it as well as we do everything else. And once we figure that out, we may actually launch that for you.
Great.
Let's talk about moods. And let me see where that is. There we go.
Yep. Go to the next one. Yep. Okay.
What?
No. So so definitely moods is like we touched upon before is for production music, and for anything. I mean, I think I went to the Guild of Music Supervisors. I think breaks up music as far as like music for television, music for film. I think they have music for documentaries, trailers, and then video games, and I think promos for television. And, trailers for film. So those are like the main things, and they're always going to ask. Either in the vibe of or in the style of, or this mood. This is the mood we're feeling that we want to convey for this scene. So it's always mood, and it's so important. It's almost the most important thing really for production music now, I think.
It seems like it's become more important over the last 5 years. It used to be people searched more by genre. But now the genres there's so many subgenres that
and there's so many hybrids and crossovers. Like pop
the editors don't know what stuff is called.
Exactly.
So what do you need? Well, I need sad for a funeral.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to break everything down. To genres, or subgenres, and then tempo is very important too. Tempo and mood. There's a lot of different things that I think we had in one of the other slides of, but definitely mood, tempo, subgenre is probably more important than genre, because genre is just too general, too broad. You need to be a little bit more specific.
What's the name? There are 100 of them, websites where you can go to figure out what your BPM is, because I know that's important to some people, especially when the editor has already cut a scene to something, then they find out they can't use that piece of music and they need to replace it with something of identical BPM to make the cuts work.
A lot of the software, a lot of the like Logic and Pro Tools, they'll have it, where you can do that. But there's software out there. I think there's a BPM Maestro, I think is one. It's free, and it's very accurate. I test them out all the time just to make sure how accurate it is.
I've seen apps on phones where people just sit there and tap along with the kick drum, and boom.
BPM is really important now, especially for for trailers and for unscripted, because there's so much music back to back to back to back to back. They don't have time to speed up, slow down. They everything has to be seamlessly. Whether it's the same key. Which is another thing that they're asking for now is key.
Really?
If you have the same key and the same BPM, then it's a seamless, mix.
So at that point, the editor is almost like a DJ in a car.
Yeah, most editors don't care, but the real good editors will get into key and BPM and different textures, different instruments, different genres, subgenres.
That's true. I never thought about that. because if you go to a different key that is just wrong in the scale, even, I mean, it's just gonna
I mean, if you're writing new music, just do the work now instead of once you have 500 pieces of music and you have to start from scratch.
Right.
Like, definitely put in the key, put in the BPM, the tempo, because sometimes the tempo is different than the BPM.
Explain.
Like, you can have a tempo that feels fast, but the BPM is slow. It's more like the feel of it. How does it feel? Sometimes like a waltz, say, can feel fast, but the BPM is slow. But it kind of feels a little, it's a little bit more like this, but the BPM is
right.
It's a slow BPM, but it feels a lot faster.
It could be. We've had this where we've had members take us to task on, it doesn't happen much, but a few times a year maybe, where we put out a listing and says they're looking for mid-tempo stuff, and somebody will send us an email saying, that's not mid-tempo, I tapped it out.
Exactly.
And I mean, there are
that's a good
technical delineations about what is low, slow, what is mid-tempo, and what is up-tempo.
Yeah, it's a good guide, but there's always kind of like, little mid-tempo to up-tempo and, slow.
That's why we put mid to up-tempo on the listings now. We're tired of getting those emails.
So it's really more the feel of it with tempo, but that's important. Definitely put in your BPMs, your tempos, your keys. If you have it, I mean, you literally, it takes you, some people take a couple hours for a track, some people take a couple of days. Go in that little time of space, get the key, get the tempo, get the BPM, and your instrument, the featured instruments, are very important too.
So that's really important.
Yes.
Talk about that for a minute.
Some editors, some producers, directors, showrunners, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
They might only want certain instruments, so they might not want an instrument. So
right, saxophone. Most people don't want sax because it'll step on the voiceover or step on the dialogue.
Well, they'll want violin, they'll want piano, and then if you have like an alt version, those are really important too. And I always say that the descriptions in your alt versions and submixes and stems is also important. You can't have, especially now production libraries, they'll ask you for 5 or 6 stems for one cue, and they'll have the same exact description for all 5 stems. Even they'll have, orchestral with, woodwinds and brass and percussion, but the version that's stemmed out only has the piano.
Right.
So you kind of have to, you don't have to necessarily do the metadata and keywords and descriptions for every single stem, but at least put something, version with piano only, or version without the brass, so that at least when somebody looks at it, they will look at the description. They're not going to look at all the keywords. There's just too much information. That's really just for someone to actually search, whether...
I don't think that this was something you talked about in your class. Maybe it is, and I just haven't gotten to that slide yet, but... Title is something that we've pushed for years around here.
Yeah.
Being a marketing nut like I am, I understand the value of a good title.
Sure.
And, if you're writing something, if you've written a piece of music that could be good for a Tide commercial or Febreze or something, and the visuals, in your head are going to be like sheets on a clothesline blowing in the wind out in a beautiful meadow on a sunny day, you might want to call that piece of instrumental music My Sunny Day.
Sure.
Or something like
Exactly.
that.
That definitely helps. But just after a while, you just run out of words. So what I was thinking, if you have a certain, like, say, beautiful day,
right?
Keep beautiful day and then add something beautiful day, in the mountains,
Right.
Beautiful day in the garden. So if you've run out of, synonyms, I guess, you can just add to that,
Right.
because that's what happens. If you have a lot of music, you're just going to run out of adjectives, but just don't call it. I see cues called, John's house, or Bob's.
Right, something completely unrelated.
And they think they're like, whatever, it doesn't matter. It does matter, and
especially if you're an editor scanning, a playlist of 100 things on your screen, the one that sounds there's a word, titularly. Well, anyway, if the title works, if the title jumps out, if the editor's looking for something that reflects a beautiful breezy day in a meadow, and your thing is called My Beautiful Day or A Sunny Day, that's going to grab their eye much faster than John's House.
Yeah, you can tell some of the cues that were scored for a specific scene or a specific film. That, like Appalachian, mountaintops. It was made for like some type of discovery thing.
Right.
And then it might not work for some like action scene where there's a car chase. But the music might work, just the title doesn't. So that could hurt you in a case like that. But so maybe a little bit more general. But yeah, as long as the mood is in there somehow, and maybe the tempo or the rhythm or something, it's really kind of...
So how do they get all that stuff in if they're limited, if they don't have any of the software like SoundMiner? And they're working strictly with iTunes and using that. Should they go ahead and still put it in the notes section?
I would still put it in the notes section. There is a section where you can put some like moods and things like that. One of the things with moods is you're going to be limited with iTunes, and like I notice, when I do moods, I'll just have maybe 12 to 15 major moods, like the top level, like happy, sad, uplifting, inspirational, fun, and then in the keywords, variations of, happy and sad, sorrowful, mournful, melancholy, somber, tearjerker, tragedy, because you don't want to just put that all in the mood. But when someone's just searching, they'll find that. And so it's good to have those versions, but it'd be terrible if an editor or supervisor is looking for tragedy and you have something that's tragic, but you only put sad. They won't find it. So it's good to put that stuff in, and you can have up to 1,000 characters. So you can put a lot in there.
How many keywords make people in the industry look at you and go, okay, buddy, I see what your game is. I see that you're stuffing this. Because you may have something, you just brought up a great point. You could have sad, melancholy, somber, many descriptors that would all be accurate for a piece of music. How do you know when you've gone too far?
I think up to maybe 20, because you also have to put in probably the instruments too, and the tempo, and the texture. Is it gritty? Is it bright? Is it dirty? Things like that. So you do have to put that stuff in there as well, I think. But I think like 20. And honestly, as long as they're all relevant, they're not going to look at you anyway. If it's just in a spreadsheet, it might be a bit much.
Yeah.
But a lot of those spreadsheets, they could just import it easily into a disco or to a source audio or to a SoundMiner. And, most editors, supervisors, even if you're going on Spotify or Pandora or YouTube, you're not going to look at all the keywords. You're just going to type in whatever you're looking for in a search, and it pops up. So you're not really looking at the back end of how it all works.
I've noticed that when I've looked at libraries that use source audio as their kind of music hosting format, and I see the keywords that are in there, it's pretty easy to see when a library is using musician-generated keywords versus a professional that would know how to do it. And you click on the stuff, and I know as an industry professional, assuming that you think I'm a professional, because I know I do, and I click on the stuff and listen to it and go, what the hell? Oh, the library didn't do this. They were relying on the musicians, and the musicians are like, hell, I'm going to put birthday music in there because somebody's going to have a birthday sooner or later.
Yeah.
But it's a funeral dirge, and they put birthday music because, well, birthday and death day.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work like that.
No, I worked on the show Dance Moms, and the library would give us music specifically for the show, and they would put, Maddie was one of the big dancers, Maddie's dance. And I'm like, then what's going to happen when you put this in a different show?
Right.
What's Maddie's dance doesn't mean anything anymore. And it wasn't even dance. It was like,
Oh,
so
man.
that's even worse. So
And what if they want to use under somebody named Bob?
Exactly. I mean, you just hope that whoever curates the library puts it in the right category and the editor doesn't care.
It's
And the thing with metadata too now is a lot of it is searchable now for editors too, like within Avid, within Pro Tools, even Premiere. I think Final Cut. You can actually search a lot of that metadata now also there. So it's really important that the editors find it, the supervisor finds it, and if you have it on any site like like an iStock or a Shutterstock or a Pond 5, I mean, they expect you to do your own metadata. So those are great resources. I mean, I know a lot of composers make really good money on Pond 5 and iStock and Shutterstock and whatever the case. So and it's all keywords.
Somebody once told me, I think it was the woman who's vice president of Shutterstock, once told me at somebody else's convention that the secret to getting a lot of uses is having people in your shots. People shoot artistic shots, like beautiful mountaintop, beautiful sunset. But she said, no, having people in your shots. But you have to have releases from the people who are in your shots. So remember that. A lot, like people who look professional. Like in office settings, she said, is one that gets used a lot. But you would have to keyword that stuff as well, too, because if you're somebody doing a brochure or a website and you're doing it for a dental office, you're going to...
You create a playlist. You create a playlist for that style.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of stock photography back in the day, so I know I would get all my friends and, my good-looking friends, my multiracial mix of different people, but educational is huge, healthcare, business, and food. I used to do websites for food companies, and I would take all their pictures, charge them for their food, put it on their website, repurpose it, and put it up on on Shutterstock and
that's right, because you own the copyright.
Yeah, so I own the copyright, and I would put it up there.
And you got to eat the food.
Yeah, I got to eat the food. I got paid to take the pictures, and then I made more money later.
Wow, so what are you doing in the music industry? It sounds like a better gig.
But it was all the same technology as far as we had to put the keywords in. We had to put the descriptions in, and people found it based on my metadata. So it's the same exact thing with the music. It's all related,
Wow, now I want to sell taxi and do nothing but order food, take pictures of it, eat it, and get paid to do it.
I went to China and France, and, iStock Photo paid for my trips.
Wow.
Essentially. Just,
nice.
But again, it's all the metadata. It's really, it's really basic, simple stuff. You just have to do the work. It's not fun like we talked about before. You want to be creative, you want to produce and just write music all day, but you have to do this.
Let's go down this list of moods. Common moods for metadata.
This is just an example of the different moods that a lot of times the editors are looking for, or the producer, the director, that kind of just describe the different types of...
It's actually a good idea to use a list like this. Whether
There's a good screenshot of this if you guys are watching.
Yeah, there you go. For those of you who are listening to it in your car right now.
I got a lot of this, actually. I created my own list, but I got some of this from like allmusic.com is a good resource for stuff like this. I think allmusic.com/ keywords or moods even. For
those of you, I know a certain number of our Taxi TV regulars are listening to the show while they're driving and hopefully not watching the screen, but I'm just going to give you the first column. Aggressive, airy, ambitious, angry, angst, anguished, distraught is a slash. Atmospheric, bittersweet, bleak, boisterous, bombastic, brash, bright, brooding, calm / peaceful, campy, carefree, cartoonish, celebratory, cerebral, cheerful, childlike, clinical, comical, confident. So that's just one out of 6 columns. And of course there are many, many more. But my point is, if you look at what the industry is using for moods, rather than trying to come up with your own words, you're much more likely to hit the nail on the head.
Sure. Yeah. Some people want to be creative and add their own keywords, and which is great. I would put that maybe in the description if you want to be creative. But if you want people to find your music, kind of use what they're looking for. Like, what are they looking for? And the thing, like, the metadata is constantly changing. Like I said, you can't just sit back and say, So every couple of months, see what's out there. Just like styles of music, genres, there's new stuff coming up all the time.
So if they have their own catalog of stuff that hasn't been picked up, is it worthwhile once a quarter or twice a year to go in and revisit the stuff that they've already tagged that hasn't been picked up by a library and see if they can freshen it up?
Definitely, yeah. If you're submitting music to an animal show, add a little things like playful and cheerful and for like an animal show, little puppies playing and things like that.
Speaking, sorry, go ahead. Finish that thought.
No, just so, and if it's, there's so many reality competition shows, like I said, we mentioned before, like things like if it's very driving competition, and it can be anything. It can be, like Southern rock, rock music. Modern orchestra is very fast, very driving, very bombastic, exciting. That's you can use that all for competition, and anything slow and pensive and kind of anticipatory. That's all.
Write them down. I always tell people, if you can zero in on a show, and I'm speaking mostly of reality shows now, just because they use so many cues. It's just like the easiest way to get into this thing is submit music that's good for reality
even
television.
some scripted stuff too nowadays.
So, but sit down with a legal pad, and or you could do it with an iPad if you're tech savvy. And while you're watching the show, make notes about this kind of cue, this kind of mood, any notes you can, so that you get a feel for what that show routinely uses.
Exactly.
And then you could create music that would be apropos of that show.
Absolutely.
Especially if you find out a certain library gets a lot of music picked up by that show. Make it easy for everybody.
One of the things I used to have to do is whatever artist was hot.
Right.
I would have to go back and this cue sounds like this artist. But they would ask you specifically, we need music that sounds like this artist, and whatever the flavor of the month was. And I have to go in and add.
Didn't you mention somewhere in your slides not to do that anymore?
Now that we do not have to do that, I'm like, thank goodness. I don't have to go back and do that anymore. So I actually had to go back and remove all of those.
Why do they not want? Because of legal reasons?
Just legal reasons, lawsuits. I mean, you're basically telling them, hey, we purposely made it sound like you.
Right.
And even if it's just in a vibe, even if it's not a total ripoff, even if in court it won't hold up, you don't even want to go there. Some people are so litigious, and it's not even the artists, it's the publishers. They're going to want their money, and it's just safer not to even put it.
We'll put it in our listings, but
totally.
But we also make sure that we say to people, look, they don't want you to rip it off. Number one.
Sure.
Number two is, would it fit on a playlist with these artists? Because
Exactly.
in most cases, they don't want something that sounds like Van Halen.
Yeah.
They want something that sounds like a band that would have been on the charts at the time Van Halen was on the charts in that same kind of style.
Exactly.
But they're not looking for a replacement.
Exactly. Yeah, and actually some sites you could hide that information. You can put in like David Bowie, the Beatles, whoever, the Beach Boys, and the songs, the cues will show up. But the publishers know, hey, these guys are being tricky. They're hiding that information somewhere. You can't actually find it because it's a hidden field. But a lot of companies are stopping doing that. I think overseas, maybe in Europe, some places are okay with that. But here in the States, I've noticed everyone's staying away from it. They won't even, they'll remove that stuff immediately because it's not worth it. But yeah, for listening, it's perfect. And they're always going to send you, reference tracks from artists.
Right.
So we know it sounds like that, but, just don't put it in the actual keywords. Don't put it in the metadata.
Right.
Because you're asking for trouble.
Before we were talking about...
You could put it in your notes, though. You can put in your notes as a side thing. Hey, these are my songs that sound like these artists, but just don't.
And say, could have been on the charts with.
Exactly.
Because, look, you're not putting music out there that you're trying to supplant what a particular artist has
done. Or it fits
done.
in the same playlist.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said.
So we were talking about animal stuff before, and I want to give a shout-out. I see Cass McKenty is in the chat room. Cass is the proud father of a new baby pygmy goat. So congratulations. Nice going, Cass. I mean, most people have human babies. You had a goat baby. Hey, I happen to love goats.
I saw somebody mention something about Song Trader really quick, but I know they actually, speaking to somebody who does stuff with them, and they kind of tried to minimize the amount of keywords you have. They'll have like just 5 or 6 main keywords and moods, and then they'll have maybe 3 alternate versions of those moods.
Right.
So they don't want you to have so much information in there.
Yeah. Well,
but
look,
again,
I've seen, like I said, I've seen libraries that clearly the library didn't do the work. They had the musicians doing the work, and and the people just stuff so many keywords in there, and you listen to it and go, none of these are apropos. So.
And it's important for the library. They should do the work because they know what their clients are looking for better than the composers. But if you are a composer or an artist and you really get good at this, it's only going to help you. Like I said, you're going to jump up to the top of the list because a lot of these libraries and production companies and even a lot of these stock sites, they have so many people ahead of you that they're
Yeah.
going to get to. And, by the time they put your music in, it's going to be months and months and months. And that's potential money you're losing that you could be in a show.
We get this call and email from members quite often where I was introduced through a music library through Taxi.
Mm-hmm.
You guys forwarded my music. They reached out and they sent me an email saying they were interested or they wanted to do a deal with me. And sometimes, they sent me the contract. So I reviewed the contract. I sent it back in, and now I haven't heard from them it's been 3 months. What's the deal? That's the deal. They're so bogged down putting metadata in.
Exactly.
I mean, I have friends that are library owners, and I'll talk to them frequently after work. Most of my conversations happen with them actually after work, and they will often lament, I'm sitting here doing, accounting basically, and they mean entering metadata.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the butt.
Total pain in the butt. It could be tedious, but it can be fun too.
Really? How can it be fun, Joe?
If the music's good,
okay.
and it usually is. Not always, but
yeah. I mean, how much dramedy can you listen to and still call it fun? Right?
Exactly. I mean, you hope the artists and the composer give you, we try to have them, put it in a certain format, so it's just easier to, do a little homework. One of the things actually, which is great, if you guys do want to get like say sound miner,
right?
Spend a little extra money. If you have a big library, if you have a lot of songs, if you have a lot of music, there's a lot of scripts you can run. So you can actually, if we'll sometimes for the bigger libraries that I work with, I'll tell them, hey, give us your cue, with the library prefix,
Mm-hmm.
the composer prefix, the name of the track, the version of the track, the BPM, and the key. So you have a really long thing like this, which is crazy. You would not submit that, probably to an actual site. But with that, if you put an underscore in between each one, you can actually create a script that puts each one of those
in the right field.
In the right field.
Oh,
and
good
then
to
you
know.
can you can do a batch process that creates a description for you based on those individual fields. And then after you do that, you can clean up the file and just make it, awesome cue number 3, and get rid of all the other information. But at least it's in there, but that's all information that different libraries will ask for, and depending on what they need, you give it to them. If they don't need it, you don't give it to them. But at least you have it, and you can do it literally batch process of 10,000 cues,
Wow.
just on that. As long as you know the genre, the subgenre, the mood, and they'll give you folders based on that.
Yeah.
You can it'll just save you hours and hours of time, days, weeks.
Wow.
So that's a little
I didn't
shortcut
know that.
you
That's
can
great
do.
information.
Yeah.
So really, the average citizen, if you will, the people watching the show, they could do that. They could, just by
Absolutely.
putting the underscore in, they're making it easy for the libraries that have
Sure.
Sound Miner
Sure.
to import their stuff
And
much
that's with
faster.
anything. Yeah, that's what
They're going to love you for that.
That's what a CSV file is. It's comma. It's like a comma delimited. You
Right.
can either do it by underscore. You can do it by dash. So you can break it up by the dash, by the underscore, and put it in separate fields.
So you could do it by comma delimited
Yeah.
as well for Sound Miner?
Yeah.
That's amazing
And
information.
that's the way source audio. You can do things like that as well. Yeah.
That's great information. Let's see. Oh, let's talk about strategies for lyrical themes. We haven't touched on that yet, and I really, really want to because
It's very similar just to the basic, subgenres. I mean, some people, there's so many different types of love songs, inspirational songs about heartbreak, reflection, parties. So just have some type of terminology, so it's not just love. I mean, you can be feeling love, it can be attraction, relationship, inspiration. It could be, there's so many different types of inspiration,
Right. Is it
So-
like patriotic inspiration?
Exactly.
Is it you're my hero inspiration?
Exactly.
Is it religious inspiration?
So it's just important to just kind of have like a little terminology of that. So I just gave a couple of examples. I think maybe there's a slide after this.
There
just,
is.
just sort of a breakdown, like
Ta-da.
and so many, like especially the ad placements and summer songs, and there's certain just just
What about keywording, pulling your keyword out of the chorus? Let's say you've written a song about female, beat-driven, dancey, female empowerment songs are really big in fashion advertising.
Sure.
So, the girls and I are going out on the town kind of stuff. I don't need anybody.
Sure.
I certainly don't need a
those
guy
things
'cause
are
I've got my act together and I've got the world by the tiger by the tail, as it were. So, is it fair game to take, let's say your chorus is, I've got the tiger by the tail.
Sure.
Can you keyword tiger?
Tiger.
That's a bad one because it's going to show up for zoo stuff, right?
No, but it could still work. I mean, hey, if you have a tiger in it, who knows? Maybe they'll use it for
right. That's true.
They'll use it for Dr. Dolittle. You'll never know. And whatever definitely the hook is super important. And it's the general theme of the song. You don't have to put every lyric in there.
Can you take like the key phrase from the chorus if you've got like a 5-word key phrase that comprises the hook?
Yeah, if it's very specific and it makes sense.
On its own, right?
Yeah,
isolated.
Definitely. If it's isolated, definitely. If it's a general theme that's used over and over, which, everything for the last 40, 50 years has kind of been just recycled a little bit. And
Who let the dogs out? There's an example.
Exactly.
Okay.
No, definitely dogs and, in that situation. But, yeah, definitely the entire tag, the entire 3 or 4 or 5 words from the hook.
Love. I'm looking. Let me catch up with myself here. I've got these on paper. Love, yeah. Falling in love, infatuation, attraction, relationship. We get this request quite frequently throughout any given year, looking for familial love. I love my mom, I love my dad, I love my family, versus I love you, Joe.
Exactly.
Right. So
and try to be general. It's always good. I'll go back to Dance Moms because we used to do so much custom music. We had like 5 songs every single episode. I'd have to reach out to a lot of labels, a lot of production libraries, independent artists to write stuff. It's always, even though there were girls and dancing, sometimes they'd have group numbers and sometimes they'd have boys dancing with them. So it's always good to have us and we, because if the person, the song is being played as an underscore is female, but there's a guy singing,
right?
If you say he and him,
very
then
limiting.
You're limited. So try to be a little general when possible. It kind of helps. If you're thinking about trying to get placements. I mean, if it's very specific to, male, female, whatever the case may be, then obviously don't do that. But if you're thinking more bigger and actually trying to get placements for films and ads, definitely stay away from the him and the her and the she and us and them, we. Those are good things to...
Right, inclusive and group-like.
Exactly, because it doesn't matter. Yeah, it could be a guy singing and with a female. So a lot of times if it's a female, they want a female song. If it's a guy, they want a male. But in a case like that, it wouldn't really matter. Or you can kind of...
Same thing applies actually from a production standpoint. Gang unison vocals work much better for commercials than harmony stacks. And the reason is because gang unisons, people, if we were together at a party with a group of friends, we wouldn't sing in harmony. We would all sing in the same key, and it would be a group of people. So by having gang unisons in music that goes in commercials, it feels inclusive and makes the audience feel like they're part of it.
Exactly.
And everybody can sing along with it.
Yeah, that's great.
Try and sing the high harmony part from Take It to the Limit. Can't do it.
Can't even sing the low part.
I can't sing at all. Okay, let's go back a little bit. I want to talk about do's and don'ts of tags. General do's and don'ts. And let me find
I think we mentioned some of that before. Don't stuff irrelevant information.
Right.
Because, if they keep finding your music and it doesn't match what you're saying it is.
Right. You can only get away with that twice and then
they're not gonna,
blacklisted.
Yeah, totally get blacklisted. And, you lose your integrity, really. Definitely, famous artists, because of obvious reasons, just because of legal issues going on, especially now. You want to stay away from that. Definitely stems, alt versions, alt mixes.
Let's talk about some words that you would use to connotate or annotate stems.
A lot of it depends. Some stems are really good standalone, like
Yeah.
acoustic guitar and piano, version.
Right.
And then just talk about just acoustic and piano. It can be a full orchestral piece, but acoustic guitar and piano have a life of its own. I know so many composers who they get a lot more placements on their stems than they do from the full version.
Seems like that's almost a rule of thumb
Yeah.
nowadays.
So
So
definitely-
would you call that like solo piano, solo guitar?
I would put down acoustic guitar and piano only.
If they were both playing
Yeah.
in that stem, okay.
Yeah, and then I know like Discovery, they won't even take stems. They only want like standalone, alt mixes. Because sometimes you'll have a stem that's 5 minutes, and there'll be a violin at the 30-second mark, the 1:30, and the 2-minute mark. But
Right.
there's so many gaps in between. It doesn't really stand alone by itself. So anything that can stand alone, if it's a violin throughout, a piano throughout, an acoustic guitar throughout, a percussion throughout, for hip hop and pop, EDM, the grooves are really important. You can just have just the bass and drums. And maybe, and they stand alone by themselves. They get a lot of placements just in
Yeah.
the groove. They don't want the melody sometimes. And like I said before, if there's a thin cue that doesn't have a strong, beat, they'll use, the groove of the beat underneath that, and you'll get, dual purposes.
Unrelated to tagging and metadata, is it a truism in your professional opinion that less is more almost all the time?
Yeah.
I'm talking about instrumentation now.
Definitely.
I hear this so often that it's just like a hip hop beat, but yet musicians are compelled to try and do their best,
Sure.
which I certainly understand. Everybody wants to win the race, so there's layer and layer and layer, but
Yeah.
the stuff that you hear actually getting used is very stripped down.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the virtuosos are losing work,
Yeah.
because
It's sad.
it's just too busy, it's just too much, and we have some great musicians that I know work with different libraries, and a lot of times the favorite pieces of music that I love don't get the placements because it's just too busy, or it's just too too good sometimes.
Yeah.
For film, or for scripted, or especially for like reality. It's just like you said, it has to kind of dummy it down a little bit, strip it down a little bit. Doesn't mean it's bad.
And don't worry, because musicians, I understand, you don't want to dumb anything down. You want to show quality. You want to show that you're really, really good. But you know what? There's brown shoes and there's beige shoes
Sure.
and there's black shoes.
Sure.
And you can have flip-flops and you can have a $400 pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Just because you're making flip-flops doesn't mean that you also can't make the $400
Exactly.
shoes for the right circumstance.
I mean, it's harder to make something interesting and sound good without being overtly busy and intricate and just have so much going on. If you can make something really simple and basic and it still sounds great, then that's a talent in itself too.
Yep.
I mean, just think of the Beatles. It's the kind of the most fundamental basic. There was nothing show off. They were good musicians. None of them were great,
Right.
but it's the most popular music. Best band ever, in my opinion. And
Yep.
it wasn't crazy over the top. They weren't virtuosos. So it's an example right there.
Melody,
really.
lyric, and beat.
Yeah.
That's what popped through. We've probably already touched on lyrical theme do's and don'ts as well. Let me get up to that page. Vocal song.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Let's go to that page for a second. Where did I go? So there we go. All right, so yeah, let's talk about those. Vocal song do's and don'ts. Can you elaborate on that while I've got this screen up, please?
Sure. I mean, other than the obvious of putting in, the general theme of the song and maybe the hooks, definitely, I always have lyrics, if possible, in the metadata or readily available, easy, especially for a film and also for captioning. Like shows need captioning. They want to get the lyrics and for the transcribers. And if they're gonna also transpose it to a different language, but explicit lyrics, drug use, those are things you have to. Violence, either have a clean version, bleep it out, or mention it so that they can cut around it.
So how do you mention that? Let's say a song's got a lot of profanity in it, which nowadays is more and more common,
I guess you can
even
put,
on cable.
I guess graphic language. It's not necessarily explicit, but graphic. You
Do
know,
people ever list the actual F word or whatever the word might be?
No, just explicit. It's good enough.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to say what it is. I mean, a lot of shows, films, documentaries won't use it if, you know, if there's like rape, drugs, violence, you know, they won't use it. Even if, I mean, sometimes even if that part isn't in the song,
Right.
if it's in the actual, you know, if it's not no use, if it's in the actual song itself, they won't use it, you know, or if it's, I mean, I've had situations where there was a film where, you know, it was about like, you know, there was a rape and there was like transgender stuff and there was like killing and murders and it was kind of like, you know, very graphic. And even though the scene we were going to use a song and it was just a Christmas song, very positive, very happy, based on the, you know, because of the song, the content of the movie itself, they wouldn't use the song. And it happens the other way around too. They won't use a song if it has, you know.
I think some musicians live under the misguided belief that if I leave that in my song and they love the song, they'll reach out to me, which if you're Aerosmith would be true.
Sure.
If you're a famous artist. But if you're not a famous artist, they're just going to go look for another song that doesn't have it. They're not going to ask you for a clean version. Yeah. Well, they may ask you for a clean version. They'll ask the library for a clean version. But if it's a chain of events that's going to take a day or two or three, they need that problem solved in minutes.
And if it's possible, you know, just mute it out. Yeah. Have a clean version. It might be too hard to go in and redo the whole thing with a clean version, but at least mute it out if you can, or mention it. And you know, they'll probably still use it.
Yeah.
But just so they know to cut it out or trim it out and not put in the actual scene. If there's lyrics in a different language, it's also important to find out what it means in that language, because you know, who knows what they're saying. And
we just recently had a listing for Thai music, and one of our members very kindly offered to have his ex-wife and his daughter by his ex-wife, who also speaks Thai, that if we needed them to listen to the stuff to make sure that the lyrics made sense, that there was no profanity in there. And I said to him, I think we're going to get like 2 submissions for this, and we're going to let the library solve that problem, but thank you. I thought that was very, very kind of him to offer. You have a slide called What to Listen For, and I'm going to go to that. First of all, I love the graphic in this. Things to listen for when extracting key elements of a track to determine the genre or subgenre. And you start with the tonal quality, which is something that we touched on before, but...
as far as, I guess that's just as far as how to categorize it.
Yeah.
Like if there's, you know, you can have an acoustic guitar or piano, but then there's a lot of synthetic synth, or maybe there's a loop under it. I probably wouldn't put it under, you know, acoustic. I probably would put it maybe more under like synthetic or electric, because it's more like a hybrid.
So what if it's a hybrid with an acoustic guitar? Would it be fair game to put acoustic guitar and synth in there?
No, you definitely have to put it in the keyword if it's something that's very important. But as far as just
what if it's not that important?
As far as
it's
the top
just in there,
yeah, then it probably would be. It depends. If it's pop music, then it would just be like, you know, pop. You know, it'd be like if it's electronica, if it's, you know, it can be pop dance, pop rock. But I wouldn't put it under acoustic. If it's just, you know, like strings and violin and just very organic instruments, then it'd probably be orchestral. But if there's a lot of, if it's more modern and there's an actual a loop under it, or electric guitars, that would be more like a modern orchestral thing, or a hybrid, which would be modern orchestral essentially. So
right.
So if so whatever the main hook or the main, because you might have a hip hop song that's very, you know, orchestral with strings, and there might be a little breakdown with just violin and piano, where that in itself is acoustic and very, you know, classical, but I wouldn't put that under classical or, you know, organic or acoustic,
right?
Just because that little piece, even though as a standalone it is. So definitely put that in the description. Hey, there is a breakdown. that has acoustic.
That's a great point.
You know, so
Right.
I mentioned that in there, but that wouldn't be the main. This is
Would
more,
it be fair to also mention there's a breakdown at 1 minute and 21
absolutely.
seconds? So
Definitely,
they
definitely.
could go right to it?
Yeah, that's something I would definitely put in the breakdowns for sure. You know, in the description, any type of breakdown. So this is, as far as tonal quality, that's just for determining what category or genre that you would place it in. That's really just what that's for. And as far as the rhythm and groove, it's, you know, you can't just put it under land. You can't just put it under country. There's so many different types of country. You have to listen to it. Is it Zydeco? Is it modern country? Is it bluegrass? Is it Western spaghetti? You know, and a lot of it depends on the rhythm, the groove. Same thing with jazz, and especially Latin music. You know, it could be merengue, or, you know, it can be reggaeton. It can be, you know, bachata, samba, tango, depending on what the rhythm is. So don't put it under Latin. And what determines what genre it is a lot of times is, you know, the rhythm and the groove and the textures and the instruments that you use. So,
Wow. I really like the idea of us starting a part of the forum where people can go in and get opinions on
Sure.
keywording their stuff. You know, what
That'd be
what
great.
genre, subgenre, mood, all that stuff is from other people. We've got 10 minutes left. Do you want to do a little Q&A
Sure.
with the troops? See what these guys. So, guys, let us do some Q&A. I hope you guys are learning as much as I am on this episode. Pretty fascinating stuff. Greg Vaughn says that would be a couple of people saying they like the idea of doing a keywording part of the forum. Great. We will do that.
make it a visit to forum more often.
Yeah, you know, I say this so often on the show, the forum is such a tremendous resource because, you know, social media is great, but it's very ephemeral. It's there and then it's gone, whereas the forum is like a living, breathing, it's like Encyclopedia Britannica that just keeps adding pages. I know encyclopedias are very much out of fashion now with Google and the internet, but this is a dedicated place where this information gets updated and is a continuous living, breathing resource. And the members that use the forum a lot swear by it. So I'm all about my forum. Okay, I came in late. Should you include your contact info? Yes, Marion, absolutely.
Yeah, we had there was a screen here up on top, I think, that said some of the important information definitely that you should include besides genres, mood, subgenres, tempo, cue type, under additional important metadata.
Okay.
That's all really important stuff that you should definitely put in your metadata.
Take a screenshot of that, Marion. I'm only going to leave it up for a couple more seconds because everybody else who was on time saw it already. All right, going back to our lovely faces, and let's look at some other questions.
That's
What we got. Will libraries and/or supervisors take the time to search with keywords on the internet? I'm guessing that person means, you know, like
Yeah, that's how they search for music. They're gonna
just a regular Google search versus searching within the library?
I think if it's just a regular Google search, that's one of the things I showed in the presentation was, you know, a lot of independent film directors, a lot of mom and pop shops, a lot of, you know, national companies. They're not going to go to a library sometimes. They're not going to go to supervisors. They're not going to go to APM or Megatracks or Killer Tracks. They're going to just go to Google.
Right, because they don't even know the term music library.
So I actually did show something where you can just put in certain keywords, you know, the genre, the mood, the style, and a lot of these libraries, they show up on Google. Like a lot of the playlists, they will show up on Google.
Because the libraries have gotten better about their SEO to make sure that they do show up.
Yes, so a lot of, I think Megatracks, APM, there's a few companies like that, they show up on the first page.
Yep.
So they're getting a lot of business through people who ordinarily have no relationships with anybody in the industry, and especially, like I was saying, for mom and pop shops and local broadcasters, radio people, they're going to go to Google. So definitely they will just put random keywords in Google, Yahoo, Bing, and find music.
That was weird, but the lighting just changed. What was that?
I don't know.
Do you know how to operate that thing? Because if you don't, it'll make a mess. Then don't worry about it. It felt like everything went dim, didn't it?
I think the
Just the
goes
overhead?
dim down. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, show's almost over anyway. So, but yeah, we have no idea. I'll have to talk to the lighting crew about that. Okay, what programs allow the metadata to be inserted? Sorry if you posted it. And somebody else asked before, this is stuff we covered earlier in the show.
Yes, SoundMiner is what I use. That's the one that will embed it. If you have an account with Source Audio or Harvest Media, they'll inject or embed the metadata into your files when you download it. And then the other company I haven't used is NetMix Pro.
I haven't even heard of that one.
Yeah, that's another company that's kind of like SoundMiner's competition, I guess, that they do something similar, where they'll actually take all your metadata, all your keywords, your artwork, and embed it into the file. So if 10 years later somebody finds your music, as long as your phone number and email don't change, they'll your metadata will be intact there. And if you open it up in iTunes, or even if you right-click on it, do info, control info, the information will show up, the keywords, the composer, the publisher, any contact information. So that's what I use. And, if you want to invest it, it's either do I get the new plugin or do I get SoundMiner?
Yeah. How much is SoundMiner again, do you think?
I think it was like they had a few different prices. I believe it's like $340 something.
That's like the consumer, the entry level
version.
version.
And then I did see something for about $800. I mean, I got it. Got it like 8 years ago. So the price has changed since then.
Yeah.
But we can definitely, maybe somebody can look it up really quick before we get off. But so it's not terrible. But it is a little bit of investment.
Have you had a chance? Did you meet Keith LeBrandt at the Road Rally? One of our members created a thing called Composer Catalog.
Okay.
And I know that, honestly, I've not used it because I'm not a composer, and I don't have songs. Boy, are you guys lucky. But I understand that it does a really good job of handling metadata, and it's much less expensive. So consider that.
Okay. One of the things I've met a lot of people saying, hey, you think it's going to go AI one day? We're not going to need you to manually do it. And I read a lot of companies that use these AI software. It's not 100% accurate. Obviously, it's probably more like 60% accurate. It might get the moods. It might get a major, minor key, BPM key, and general mood. But I've had conversations with quote unquote professionals, like 4 or 5 guys, just recently talking about like rockabilly music. Where we had a bunch of submissions for rockabilly, and like 5 of us disagreed on everything, and we're supposedly know music. And we couldn't agree on it. So how is a computer or some type of generated software? I'm sure at some point it will, but I think we're several years away before it actually. So the human, in other words, we still have to do it ourselves. We can't just.
There's AI software out there that can determine what a hit is, and it's never really taken off because it's still not that good. There's something about human beings that, at least for the time being, have to be involved in these processes. All right, I want to wrap this up. I was going to say, don't forget. Oh, I know what you can't forget. Don't forget. I can never get this right.
You got it.
Yeah, there you go. Don't forget to ring that little bell in the upper right-hand corner so you get notifications whenever we go live. And of course, if you're not already a subscriber, do you know how much money we spent on that sign? Feel sorry for me and hit the red subscribe button in the lower right-hand part of your screen, okay? And like us, because the more that you like us, the more YouTube likes us. The more YouTube likes us, the more people will see this valuable information and get their, I was going to use a bad word, get their stuff straight. Okay? So with that, don't forget, next year we will certainly have Joe back at the Road Rally to do a class.
Cool.
I mean, he's a celebrity now, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you guys for being part of Taxi TV today and watching this show. Hope you learned a lot. And next week, I actually made a note somewhere. Where is that note? Okay, I reminded them. I'm looking at my notes. Very responsible today. Huh? Oh, I've got it for next week. Yep. Anyway, next week's show is going to be silly mistakes sync musicians often make.
Oh,
Okay.
a lot of those.
So Elise Schiller's going to join us for that. She's great. She's super smart. She was also at the Road Rally. So join us next week for silly mistakes sync musicians make. I could make a poem out of that. Thank you, guys. See you next week for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Bye-bye. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you so much.